unexpected image that just made you giggle?
Well, I think we're live, so we better not do any spoilers.
I worked on the original pitch film.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I was working on a thing for Showtime called Likely Stories, which was a collection of short little skits and films done by The Credibility Gap, which was Michael McKean and Chris Guest and Bruno Kirby, those guys, and Harry Shearer. And we did while we were shooting that for Showtime, took their money.
Yeah, they did a tip of the hat to that on the first show.
For Spinal Tap while we were doing that little movie for Showtime.
Yeah, they did in the loop that ran while the audience was settling in. They talked about some of those early days and where everything came from, and it was fun.
Yeah, they were great at improvising.
See,
the hardest part working on those films with those guys is to try and stop from laughing and spoiling the soundtrack while they're improvising, while Chris Guest is just going off 20 minutes on a.
I just love their sense of humor. I mean, even the title of the movie, "The End Continues," makes no sense, but it's hilarious.
Well, one of the things I didn't really have top of mind was how influential that movie was, and they were talking about all of the movies and theme shows and things like that took this fake documentary thing and ran with it, and it's like, wow, oh yeah, that Office Hours is like that. In fact, they had, what's his name from England, who started the original Office Hours over there, the Academy Awards host.
Ricky Gervais.
He was going, yeah, I saw that. That was one of the reasons I did Office Hours originally over here. So you forget, Rob Reiner was pretty far ahead of his time with this completely improvised, non-scripted mockumentary idea.
Yeah, Marty DeBerge.
Yeah.
He did those little chuck wagon commercials.
Someone may, if they choose to. That would be fun.
I don't think Hot Shots would have existed, or Hot Shots Part 2 for that matter, which I actually liked more.
Oh, they descended from Abrams of the airplane.
Sure, but yeah, just the whole, I'm going to do a serious scene that is completely absurd.
What about Robin Hood Men in Tights?
Oh, yes.
Gentlemen, lend me your ears.
Well, they're doing Spaceballs too, with
yes,
with Mel.
I hope that's good.
Josh Gad is.
Nothing beats the Foley on Pizza the Hut, though. I mean, come on.
And so, Bill, I love how you called it The Office, or Office Hours, but it's The Office.
The Office, you're totally right. I messed that up, but that's not at all surprising. Let's see.
Hollywood is doing a Three's Company reading, which I've been seeing, which is pretty cool.
Nobody who's left alive. Suzanne Summers is dead.
Yeah, you have I can't think of her name.
The brunette.
Joyce
DeWitt.
And then the guy that played Larry, or that's his real name. Larry.
Yeah, the brother. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was in the
John Ritter's brother.
Building. Yeah. I didn't think he was the brother, but he was in the building. He was like a neighbor. Okay.
It was Norman Fell and then later Don Knotts, and both of them are dead.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related questions every single day since March 25th of 2020. In fact, This Sunday coming up is our 2000th live episode. We're looking forward to that. So tune in if you will. There's some things happening. I'm not sure I know all of what's going on, but it should be fun. All right, let's get to our order of business today. Alexander Knight is our reader from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Alexander, what's our first question today?
First one is coming in from a QR code. Alexis McAdams is asking, what is Genlock and why do we have to care about it if all our Blackmagic gear already has the great frame sync built in to keep all our frames working in sync, and we can add time code already?
That's a big topic, and thankfully we have people with big knowledge here to help you. I'm going to toss it to Courtney Gooden first. Courtney?
There's one other thing, and I mentioned this yesterday, and Alex isn't here today for him to pull out his wallet and go, oh my God, that's right. With the new adapter that Blackmagic built, it adds timecode in and Genlock in to the iPhone 17 Pro Max. I think it only works with that one. But what you can do then is not only just you don't have to worry about synchronizing the output if you're going to mix it in a switcher or something, but it's for synchronizing multiple cameras together so that they start and stop precisely on the same frame. And not only that, Genlock will also, in a camera with a rolling shutter, where it scans from top to bottom during a frame, it synchronizes the scan between the two cameras so that their shutters are in sync with each other. This is important if you're shooting stereo vision with two iPhones. So you could take two iPhones, put them in a rig, head to head. You'd have to flip, one upside down in post. But then you could adjust the interocular distance and the interaxial angle in that rig. You could tie them each into their little Blackmagic docks and Genlock them together so that they would start each frame and start photographing at exactly the same time, so that their shutters would be in sync, their time code would keep them in sync time-wise to the frame, so that you could then sync up those two files and they would stay in sync throughout for shooting 3D or immersive video. So that's a handy thing to have for it. Another thing that they have said that those adapters do is they allow you to fire the shutter off for stills under control of the software, so that you can then put a whole array of the phones out there for bullet time capture, where, from the Matrix, where they can move the camera around and post over a still frame, and fire off the shutters at precisely the same time on multiple phones simultaneously. So I think they did that. Danny Boyle wanted that for 28 days later or something.
So there's a lot of little things. Jason, you want to add stuff?
Courtney nailed the definition. My favorite part is that people are asking about Genlock. I think that's awesome. Yeah. Why would we need it? Well, because Apple wants to be in your Blackmagic Gear ecosystem, and they want their phones to be able to contribute to a professional production.
Yeah, just like back in the days, professional broadcast was one thing, and camcorders and the consumer stuff was entirely different. And one thing that set everybody apart in those two worlds was the fact that Blackburst, which is the transmission of TV thing that determines exactly when a frame starts, where the vertical interval finishes and the first line of it really needs to be in sync anywhere through a broadcast facility if you're going to be switching different cameras into things and adding different things. And so that's always Genlock to do what Courtney talked about, Blackburst to time things, and just being able to synchronize multiple sources has been a big differentiator between the amateur world of shooting and the professional world of professional broadcast. So this just takes iPhones, and I think there will probably be additional things in the other worlds, but at this point, with that announcement for Apple and for iPhones, it takes phone shooting into another level where it easily can integrate into more professional workflows. So we're all looking forward to getting our hands on those little tools. Next question.
I'd like to upgrade this is from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'd like to upgrade my home internet to Wi-Fi 6 or 7, depending on what is the new standard. I have gig speeds already, but my Wi-Fi /Ethernet backbone hardware is a bit outdated.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I think as things as Wi-Fi continues to improve and as these wireless rates continue to go up, it's harder to keep up with the equipment. Jeffrey Powers, dive in.
Yeah, and it's a good idea to actually start thinking about doing upgrades, especially if you have something that's about 5 to 10 years old, because it probably won't. It's probably not even getting updated anymore. And with new vulnerabilities that are coming out, that you just want to be as updated as possible. The best part about Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 7 is that combination of the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz range. So it doesn't matter what devices is on, it will just connect up. And I have had some problems with some older 2.4 gigahertz wireless not doing that, thinking that it was a 5 gigahertz wireless signal. And then you have to dumb it down to connect it up and then connect back up, and then you're all fine. But yeah, setting it up. And the other thing that I would always recommend is if you're setting up a Wi-Fi router, that you don't use the router part. You go get a separate router or a gateway that goes, so you have your modem to your router gateway to your Wi-Fi. And that way, the Wi-Fi, which will probably handle more clients than your old Wi-Fi 5 could handle, something like 30, 40, that can handle all the Wi-Fi stuff. Your router handles the router stuff. It sees one connection from the Wi-Fi, so it only counts it as one instead of 10, 20, 30, whatever. And then you have a better flow of connections, so it will work a little bit better in the end, and you can utilize the best of your gig speed, but of course it'll never get faster than whatever your speed is from the provider.
Jason Bache.
Yeah, so exactly what Jeffrey said. Keep in mind that just like a 4K production pipeline is only as good as the entire pipeline supporting 4K, so too is true for Wi-Fi 6 and or 7. Wi-Fi 6 adds 320 megahertz channel bandwidth and 4K QAM modulation, which is just barely out of draft. And again, every single piece in the chain actually has to be a part of that if you want to see, for example, your throughput to the internet being faster. The weak link for most people of which is that monolith that is, the gateway, the router, and the wireless access point that you didn't pay for from the cable company that is the worst of all three, built by the lowest bidder.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I just recently upgraded myself to fiber optic, and I'm getting these wonderful speeds like 942 up and 942 down. Just ran the test while we were on here. Here's a tip for you, though. I have a fairly recent Samsung top of the line QLED TV set, and one thing I discovered about it is I plugged it in. It has an Ethernet port in the back of it, and I thought, well, I'll just plug it into Ethernet for solid reception. I found out the Ethernet port on Samsung TVs is 10100, and the Wi-Fi input on my 4K Fire Stick is Wi-Fi 6. So I get 3 times the speed off the Wi-Fi on the Fire Stick than I do off the plugged-in Ethernet on the television set. So if you've got a Samsung TV with an Ethernet plug on it, you might think about unplugging the Ethernet and going with the Wi-Fi connection, because Wi-Fi 6 is a lot faster than 10100.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to run into which block in the chain is slowing everything else down until you upgrade literally everything top to bottom in a workflow. Alexander Knight?
Yeah, if we're talking about access points, I've really enjoyed the UniFi access points. I have this one here. This is the U6 Pro, which supports Wi-Fi 6. They do have newer models that support Wi-Fi 7 as well, but I get really good speeds from this. They seem to be robust. I also like that it's flat and thin, and it looks like the spaceship from the day the Earth stood still. So that one works for me.
Next question.
This question's coming in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Help a teacher, high school senior project. Proposal is creating an immersive exhibit. We want to get a 360 camera to then transfer the video into a VR experience. Suggestions on gear and how to do this would be fantastic. Thank you in advance.
Jeffrey Powers is going to start us off here. Jeffrey?
So 360 is great, but you can also think 180 instead of just the whole turn your head fully experienced, because 180 is more than enough to do a left-right look, and it usually captures everything that you need to do or need to see. Because then if you turn your head all the way around, all you see is like gear in the background or anything like that. But if you decide, Roscoe, that they want to do that 360 experience, then the standard, like I still have the Insta360 RS, the original 1 megapixel camera, works really well. Of course, they've done a lot of updates to that with newer versions, and then of course you could go into the pro models. I think that it's also about sound, as you know, that is just as important. I went back and looked, because it was our 35th reunion, and I went back and I looked at our videotape, because we had it professionally taped our senior year. And I really wish I would have had something higher quality than that back then. But it's a great thing to do, because then you can grab a whole bunch of stuff. But I would highly also recommend trying to find a room that you can set up that is always going to be that same way. So when you have like groups like the track team come in and do stuff, then they can do stuff in that room. That room looks really well on the in the video, and you don't have gear stuffed in a corner or anything like that. Whereas if you're just walking the halls, you capture everything, and that means whoever's behind you, if they're doing weird faces or anything like that, then you have to deal with all of that type of stuff, unless you want it. And then, of course, it's going to be perfect for that. So those are the things. And if you can get the Ambionic sound microphone and do separate audio off of that, and then marry them together, then that's probably a really good addition to it, because, of course, it's all about sound more than video.
Courtney, your thoughts?
Well, you said immersive exhibit. So I'm wondering if this is going to be a virtual exhibit or if it's going to be a physical room that you're trying to set up. Think of Circle Vision 360 if you're old enough and have ever been to Disneyland. That was where they had several cameras, I think 8 cameras in a circle, and they were all projected onto screens. And so people came into this room and were looking up at the projected screens and could look, each person in the room could look at a different direction and see the same moment in time between all of them. So rather than just having to wear headsets for an immersive exhibit, you can walk into a room and have one. And you could achieve that effect by taking, let's say, 4 phones with a 90-degree field of view or more, and then going into post and setting them up so that they overlap just slightly, and then edge blend 4 projectors that are set in the ceiling pointing at a surrounding screen, and do the Circle Vision thing. That would be an interesting exhibit, and it wouldn't require any headgear or anything on behalf of the people that are viewing the exhibit. They could look any direction that they wanted to. Of course, it's tricky to light those situations and mic them, but you have to use wireless mics and wireless lights that are mounted just above the camera.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Roscoe, and I was thinking the same thing. I always think whenever somebody talks about immersive, I think of what Apple did with Vision Pro. But one of the things that stopped me in the original days of that was that to get it on you and to get everything set up requires a little bit of time, even if you go into an Apple store and ask for those goggles. Now, that's the high end of things. At the low end are things like cardboard viewers that'll do kind of a 3D thing, but I'm not sure that's fully immersive. So defining the terms and figuring out, I think Courtney's idea is really interesting, because getting enough hardware to be able to let people get into a headset and to make sure that it fits and it works correctly for a bunch of people come to an exhibit would be an awfully heavy lift. But that idea of a room where you can show back an immersive kind of experience and let people turn around and see it could be a lot of fun, particularly if it was something that had some music to it or something like that, and it was kind of a fun thing to go in and dance to a party or something like that that's immersive like. Let us know how it comes out. Next question.
This is a QR code question coming in from B. Race in Montreal, Canada. We've been able to shoot in 4K and 120 FPS for a few years now, and with DaVinci Studio, we can have a 120 timeline as well. Given most phone, tablet, and monitors are 120 capable, Why don't we shoot in this format? Advantages and disadvantages.
I'm thinking the storage companies love you for this question. Let's go to Jason Bache.
Bill set me up nicely there. Bandwidth, it's straight away bandwidth. Just because it's capable of 120 frames per second doesn't mean that the production necessarily will benefit from 120 frames per second. There is a serious advantage that just comes down to simple math. If you take 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, all of them divide perfectly into 120 frames. So if you do shoot in 120, you can actually deliver in any one of those deliverables, and you won't get any strange tearing.
There you go. Jeffrey Powers, your thoughts?
There's also, if you're talking about putting it out on the internet, YouTube doesn't do 120 frames a second. Facebook doesn't do 120 frames a second. So, but you put a 120 frames a second into a YouTube that's only 60, and you've got some great quality. I remember when I first saw my first 60 frames a second over 30 frames a second, and I could definitely tell the crispness of that 60 frames a second. Same thing with 120. You could see detail that you never saw before in basically a true HDR format. So it's great for up in the future, but for right now, there's a lot of places where you cannot send 120. So if you want to be or forwards compatible, then you can do it that way. But right now, 60 is the main standard.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, and if you're shooting dramatic film, 24 is the main standard. Or 23.98 if you're shooting HD. Back in 2019, Ang Lee did a film called Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. And that was shot with a super high frame rate, I think 60 frames per second, was it 60 or 120 digital camera, and 4K 120. And I went and saw it at the Sonorama Dome, projected. They had to bring in special projectors that could run at that frame rate and that resolution. And it was awful. Because it was a dramatic film. And while some of the action scenes were a little too real, because there's a war section in there, and some of the less dramatic scenes, less actions-driven scenes, are too realistic looking, because you don't have any sense that you're watching a movie. It's kind of like you're watching a big stage play through binoculars or something, because there's no motion.
And where is it? There it is. Zoom Tiles is just an incredible piece of software from our own Andy Carluccio and Liminal. And this does take the remote challenge out of it and allows the production, the broadcast side of it to basically be able to isolate every feed and then pull it in. If you're just talking about a one-on-one, Zoom screen sharing will absolutely take 1080 and deliver that to everybody.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, that's those are the things I did. I actually just did an interview a couple days ago, and sometimes it's just easier just to do the screen scrape thing. But with Zoom, bringing Zoom in through vMix, through Wirecast Ecamm, and all the others, it helps immensely. And the one thing that I can do with that, especially with the vMix, is I can have that set as a ISO feed. So I can always correct it, because the cool thing that I can do, as long as they're at 720, is I can then take their feed, if it's not live, of course, take their feed and put it into Topaz, and then upscale it from there, and then bring it back in for the post-production. And then that will change a lot of things. You can't really do it too well with a 360 feed. It has to be 720 or better. And 1080, of course, is the most optimal, because then you can really do an upscale and get some great detail off of that.
And I think it's still true. I might be wrong about this because I haven't really paid much attention. But in earlier, we were all taught here at office hours that if everybody has a contribution level at a certain level, then the whole meeting can go out serving that level to everyone. We had circumstances where somebody would come in on a phone or something that had a lot less bandwidth, and in the old days, at least, that would drag down the export of the Zoom meeting and things like that, kind of the lowest common denominator. They may have found ways around that, but I'm not sure. So I know a lot of people go, our Zooms don't look anywhere near as good as office hours, and just understand that we've taken a lot of time diligently to work on video and audio so that all the contributors who you see on the panel here have high-quality chains that come out of us into the web, into the Zoom hub, and then out to the web without degrading the quality anywhere along the lines. And sometimes with individual ISPs and things like that, you run into problems. You just really can't do that as well. So it does take some thinking and working, but, we've all managed to do it, and it's certainly very possible out there. Next question.
This one is from Zach Stell-Smith from Chautauqua, New York. Will the Apple M4 chip with 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU, 16-core neural engine, 16 gigabyte unified memory handle up to 4 Zoom ISO feeds well at 720p and audio bitrate at 128K?
I'm going to toss it right back to Alexander for an answer.
That is mere child's play for that computer. I'm happy to report that even the base level M4, which, by the way, my main machine that runs Mimo Live. Now, I don't know if you're just going to use a software-based switcher or what you're going to use here, but other than just Zoom ISO to do all this. But, for example, I have a Mimo Live template, and Mimo Live is able to tap into the Zoom API and bring in ISO video and audio feeds. And in my tests, I've done 8 participants in a meeting at full, 1080p resolution with graphics, lower thirds, animations, playback of video. I ISO record every single participant as a WAV file, and then I also record as a backup while I'm live streaming. I also record a 4K output of what's going out to programs. So I'm ISO recording all that stuff and live streaming. By the way, I live stream at 4K to YouTube. So I'm doing all of this in a single machine with 16 gigabytes of RAM on an M4. So that will give you some sense of what it can do.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, even my older M1, it can do 724 singles for there. And of course, Alexander said it perfectly. It's all about the software that you're going to use. If you're going to use OBS, you might run into some problems. If you're going to use something like Mimo Live, where they're constantly trying to figure out how to make the machine better, then you're gonna have a better result from there. So I would look at what you've got on the machine, what you've got running on the machine at the time, closing all the tabs from Chrome or Firefox or whatever, closing all those unnecessary programs like Dropbox or Box or anything that's going to go out to the interweb at any point in time, and make it as clean of a machine as possible. You have the best chance of not having any problems with that. And of course, it's also about that internet connection. So having something that's a solid internet connection, you'll be fine.
Next question.
This one's coming in from Robert Green in Los Angeles here on the crew. Spinal Tap at the movies with a live Q&A. Who was at the show last night? How was the tech?
And I was suddenly trying to put my phone in place because I was there. I was one of the moderators along with a bunch of other people from office hours who were in various cities around the country. And it was fun. In our theater, I was also on the comms channel in the background as we were all kind of helping to facilitate this. Alex had asked a bunch of us to, if we were close to an IMAX theater, to go out and watch the show. First and foremost, I laughed a lot at the movie. I think Robert Reiner did a really good job with the movie. It's got a lot of surprises and a lot of laughs, and I found it thoroughly entertaining. Beyond that, the live section, so what happened was basically you arrived, there was some there was an art card up for a while. Then there was into a live promo that looped. Then at the start time, all the theaters started the movie on the right synchronization thing, and then everybody watched the movie across the country. Then they moved from the movie display to a live camera feed out of I think it was the Chinese Theater in Hollywood next to where Courtney is. And the cast, along with Rob Reiner, were on stage answering live questions coming off an iPad on stage. And the whole thing where I was worked flawlessly. I heard there were a few technical things some places, and the theaters had to do not a heavy lift, but they had to know their technology, and they had to, plumb all this live stuff into their big projectors. These were IMAX theaters, though. So I have to say there was nowhere to hide. If the technical quality hadn't been there, we would have seen it, because these are big, big, big screens with very powerful, large sound systems. And in my experience, the whole thing just worked perfectly. I enjoyed the experience immensely. I enjoyed the content immensely. It was just fun. And so I had a really good time. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on it, but that was my experience last night. Courtney?
I was not informed, so I just maybe wasn't paying attention to my email. I missed my invitation in the mail, Alex.
Oh dear!
But,
I was hoping.
I was going to ask you what is the entry fee for these kind of things? If they're doing more of these coordinated, shows at the IMAX theaters where they have commentary or a virtual cast interview afterwards. For these live events, I know Alex has been working on a lot of them. What's the cost to the general public, when they open this?
I have no idea, and I'm sorry to report that. I didn't even think about that. We were asked to show up and take notes and make sure we had some technical details to help the theater owners if they had some tie-in problems with the live lines and things like that. So that was our function, and that's why we were admitted. Without cost, so I never had to buy a ticket. So I think it's the same I think this special showing was the same as regular movie cost. So what is movies now in your area? 12, 15
well,
bucks,
IMAX
somewhere
about
like that?
$5 to
Okay, so
$35.
there you go.
Whether it's a special screening or not.
Yeah, special screening kind of things. Jeffrey Powers, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think that it's just going to be an added value to going to see the movie on the preview day and giving you just that extra thing. Just like as I walked in, I didn't get to participate in it because apparently my IMAX was not part of the list, but I did see the movie last night. And as you walked in, there's other things you can do, like you can get the $15 popcorn tin that says Spinal Tap, or it was another $15 cup that you could get that had Spinal Tap on it. So they'll have ways to make money, but it's about that going to the movie theater experience and getting something more that you wouldn't get if you decide to stream it from some unreputable source out there, or wait until it comes to streaming services. Although the Q&A could be on like a DVD extended set or something like that in the future, but having that live experience, having that ability to kind of interact with the cast is always a great thing, and I would have loved to have seen that part.
And the Q&A with an improv group is probably a lot better than most Q&As that I've attended.
Well, they stayed in character. In fact, they introduced Rob Reiner as his character on stage. And so the three actors who are the stars of this stayed in character the whole time. And they were genuinely funny. We got a lot of laughs out of them. This is the perfect audience, because this is an audience of Spinal Tap fans. The people came out. I saw a number of people in Spinal Tap T-shirts and things like that, and these were vintage ones who obviously had been fans for a long time. I also, as I walked out at the end of the night, thought it was just charming because people really were kind of gathering and talking about the experience. I think they did a really good job of making it not only a modern movie, but tapping into the gestalt of what Spinal Tap was, which was a movie that, as they said, the critics loved it, but the audience kind of stayed away in droves when it was first out. And it really wasn't until it got on video and on the video stores and pay-per-view and things like that it turned into kind of the cult phenomenon that it is today. And it was also fascinating for me in the pre-show discussions. that were looped, you got to see some of the how this came about. They talked about the comedy troupes that the guys had been in beforehand, and really the genesis of the whole idea for doing this. And they talked at length about the fact that this no script, we're just going to go out and improvise the whole thing, really was the genesis of a lot of movies like Office Space and all sorts of movies that have taken this same, we're just going to pretend this is real and we're doing a documentary about it, and it's going to be funny because we're doing this with funny people. And, they're still funny today, in my opinion. Let's go to our next question.
This one is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Let's talk heavy-duty motherboards for media production. What's the current powerhouse of choice? Asus new X870/B850 series motherboards or something else?
Nothing else. This show has taught us how to read complex letters. Good job, Alexander. And I'm going right back to you for the first comment.
Okay. So as somebody who used to have a company that built custom PCs, I used to use Asus. I've also used Gigabyte and MSI. I've had good luck with all those boards. I haven't built a PC in quite a long time, but I've always liked Asus as a brand, and their boards are pretty well respected in the industry. The only thing that I find, this drives me absolutely crazy, and I'll show you this, but of course everyone has to jump on the bandwagon, and I'm not sure why, but these Asus boards are now featuring an AI advisor. They have AI networking, AI overclocking, AI cooling. So what does that mean? I got to talk to my computer now and treat it really nicely so that it doesn't absolutely destroy things. I'm a little concerned about the AI component, but
or good special AI cache for.
I just feel like in Star Trek: The Voyage Home, when Scotty was talking to the computer through the mouse, "Hello, computer." We got to be very nice to our computers now.
Somebody should start selling AI flowers and chocolates so you can send something to your computer when you've offended it. Make that up. Anyway, Jason Beisch.
Yeah, I believe the motherboard accepts Bitcoin, in form of offerings. I build, I'd say it's about every month, every other month, I end up building a high-end PC. I'm trying to remember the motherboard that I used for this one, and I think it was an Asus. If I were to build today, I'd probably go with the Gigabyte, the X870E. But again, like once you get into the highest end, it really just depends on, you're going to need something or not need something really specific. The chipset of the Ethernet port ends up being more important than you might think, especially if you need to tie it into something and you have an issue with it. So, but yeah, it really just depends. And once you get past a certain price point, it's really, it's a matter of other constraint other than the manufacturer of the PCB. I would say actually matters pretty much not at all.
If you're really nice to me, computer, I'll give you 2 hours of double filtered power between 3 and 5. Jeffrey Powers.
So I do have the ProOut Art series from Asus, and I really wasn't. I've had Asus for a few years. The only thing that I had a problem with was my last motherboard was still under warranty, and I had a really horrible time with their support, and it did not get resolved. And I was going to get something else, but with Asus, they did have everything that I need. And these are the things that you need to look for in a motherboard nowadays. First of all, are you going Intel or are you going AMD? That's the most important thing. I like to go Intel because there's a lot more features that you get with an Intel motherboard that you have to fight for on an AMD motherboard. Second thing is what's called PCIe 5.0, making sure that the slots, the card slots, as well as the M2 slots are going to be PCIe 5.0. Third is the memory, if it's running at DDR5 or better, and you can bring those you get chips that will be higher speed, better use from there. Fourth, making sure that at least at least has Thunderbolt 4 on there. Windows is kind of fickle when it comes to Thunderbolt, but it's definitely worth it. You can plug in a lot of different docks or whatever that you need in there. And then finally, making sure that you have dual Ethernet, at least 2.5 gigabits per second. But like this board, it has 2.5 and a 10 gigabit per second connection. I always keep it on the 2.5 because my infrastructure, my switches are 2.5, and no need to switch it up to 10 because sometimes the 10 gigabit per second connection can be a little bit fickle as well. So those are the main things that I look for. And of course, if the motherboard can actually fit into the case with the video card, you got to think of what type of video card you're going to be putting in there, and then what type of memory you're going to put in there, and what type of M2 drives, if it's got SATA ports to it so you can add more storage to it, and of course all the USB ports that you can add to it. And then one last thing, and this is most important. Sometimes motherboards will say, oh yeah, we have 4 M2 slots. But if you put in a card into, let's say, the second PCIe lane, you look at the instructions, says, yeah, you can't use that second or that fourth M4 slot because it's being used in the PCIe card. So read the instructions as to how the motherboard works, what combinations of items you can put into the motherboard, and you should be fine.
Next question.
This one is one of my questions. Anyone go over some of the sleeper changes in DaVinci Resolve 20.2 in the editor page? Significant UI workflow updates.
Jason Bass is going to help you out here.
Hadn't until I saw your question, Alexander, and then I was kind of blown away. So spatial denoising caught my eye here. This is so much more complicated than your average denoise because it needs to do so in 3D space with the overlap of two cameras. That is so complicated that it kind of blows my mind. Camera tracker, voice isolation, surround sound, all that they've kind of played around with. I'm curious, Alexander, what caught your eye?
Okay, there's too many to cover here. So number one, first of all, codec support, they now support the Apple ProRes RAW codecs because of course they have to, right? But really it was on the editor page, they've completely redesigned all the patching on the editor page. Now, I just want to highlight a couple things because this video by Creative Video Tips, which I'm a big fan of his YouTube channel, first of all, before I even get to the changes with the patching, they've basically added a strip silence feature, and I've been wanting this for years, and you can set the threshold and it will show you here as it highlights in red. You can see from his video here, let me full screen this, so you can actually see what it's actually going to be cutting out. So for me, as someone who's editing podcasts and really needs to turn stuff around as quickly as possible, it'll just ripple delete everything, close all those gaps. So that to me is an amazing feature. And then the UI updates, there were a lot of updates to Ripple Edit and the way the patching is done. So now, and I think he shows it on this video. So I'd recommend going through it. But basically, all these buttons have been redesigned now, and you can just with your mouse drag and drop, or not drag and drop, but you can just select through, and you can actually lock. So when you're making an edit, that if you only want the video edit, the video track to be edited, but you don't want the cut to happen, say on the music track, it will do that. So just things that make editing a lot quicker and more simple. So I recommend looking at this video from Creative Video Tips on it. And if you look at the changelog too, lots of performance updates to the speech to text transcriptions as well. And then I would recommend looking at all this stuff, like just the keyframe editors being updated, and just there's too many stuff to list there. For a 0.2 update, I can't believe that they've done this. This is pretty amazing.
That was cool. That looked like Final Cut's magnetic editing of the last 12 years. At least that looks like what we've been doing for a long time. So that's very useful. If so, it's been fabulous. So, Courtney?
Yeah, besides the explainer video, which is great, that's out there, they have published a PDF that you can go find on DaVinci's site called the New Features Guide for DaVinci Resolve 2.2. So there's a PDF that goes over all the changes to color edit and audio that are in there, and has a table of contents too, so you can jump to the different pages. So it's fairly comprehensive if you want to see just what's changed in 20.2, yes.
Thank you. Paul Wallace has got our next question. Let's go to our next question.
Yes, this is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What would you use to power a small rig DTAP replacement dummy battery for Sony series cameras?
Jason Bache is going to help us out. Jason?
I'm sorry, Paul. I reject the premise of the question. I would never use a dummy battery to power any video camera that this particular battery services. I think it's a terrible idea. I think you are much better off taking using USB to deliver power. And if you lose any part of the connection, you would lose all of it if you're using a dummy battery. The cameras that take this particular battery last pretty long by themselves, but to do it with DTAP, I'm sorry, it just doesn't feel right.
Next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Courtney wanted to get in there at the last minute. Courtney?
Well, be careful, because the Canon cameras, I don't know about the Sonys, I'm not familiar with that, but several cameras, I know my Canon, will not power the camera off the USB connection. You can connect to it and download stuff from it, but powering it up for shooting video, you have to use a dummy battery on the Canons that I have. But so I'm not sure if that's the case on the Sony. So maybe that's why the dummy battery on the Sony is there, so that you can power it with external power, and it'll convert it down to the correct power for the internal battery. Because a lot of times you can't send enough current, because most USB only delivers 500 milliamps over the USB micro connector or USB-C connector. So be careful about that. See if your power supply can power the correct voltage and enough voltage to power the camera before you connect it to a USB-C, because USB-C is multi-voltage available, so it's 5, 9, 12, and 20. So, and it has to have intelligence on there to switch to the correct voltage. So if you have a dumb power supply that doesn't select the correct voltage, you could hit your camera with too much voltage.
Jeffrey?
And with DTAPs, you can, if you get a third-party DTAP, sometimes these cameras will not accept the third-party DTAP. I know that Neewer also makes a DTAP for that same model of Sony camera. So you just got to watch what you have. And, of course, if you're using that and your Sony goes kaput, Sony finds out that you were using a DTAP like that, they may say, hey, you voided your warranty by simply just putting that DTAP in.
Alexander Knight.
If you want to stay in the small rig family, like, first of all, for me personally, like, all my cameras are powered. I use dummy batteries with an external AC power brick for all of them. I've never really had an issue, but small rig does also make batteries. So if you need a mobile solution to power the camera, they make all sorts of various capacity batteries with different mounting options. So like, for example, like if you take a look at this one here, this particular one from Small Rig here, this one's cool because it actually has an LCD screen with a really cool readout, and it shows you all the voltages that are coming in, and it does have a couple of DTAP outputs as well as USB Type A ports and all sorts of other ones. So I would maybe have a look at all the different battery options from Small Rig to see if those work for you.
Jason Bache.
I call these dog piles. I just found this. I always feel bad when there's a noob question on a subreddit, and then the guy just gets, so the question is like, I'd like to use the DTAP for a dummy battery, and then all these people just dogpile on him like, never, no, my best friend fried his camera that way. It's terrible. It's like, yeah, your results may vary, Paul.
Yeah, DTAP was really designed, I think, for ENG cameras back in the shoulder-mounted news gathering era, and I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of it either these days. I've got a whole rig of DTAP cables, but I try to use them as little as possible. In fact, I've gone away from using all my larger Anton Bauer and the other batteries that I use for most of my career, and it just settled on smaller things in different rigs. But, your mileage may vary. Be careful. Next question.
This one's from Harshid Trivedi in Daytona Beach, Florida, USA. And here on the panel, I'm trying to record two individuals separately, but should I consider in person and taking my SSL and SE-V7 setup for audio and phone for camera, or have them remotely contribute? I have a 1080p business account to do remote.
Jeffrey and Jason both have opinions. Let's start with Jeffrey Powers.
So even though that remote is great and you don't have to go anywhere, like I said, I did an interview a couple days ago. It was really nice. Sat right here, did the interview. There are a lot of problems that can come from there. And Harshid, you probably have experienced those problems, like trying to get them set up and get them in a position where they look good on camera. They're not blurring their background. Their audio is good and everything like that. Whereas if you did it in person, you control all the environments. You control where they sit. You control how the camera's set up. You control what type of microphone they use. You control the audio, the video, the horizontal, everything like that. It's no Twilight Zone there. So the whole point is that you want to it's really what you're comfortable in doing. And if I had a choice of in-person versus remote, I would probably do the in-person myself.
Jason Bache.
I think at the end of the day, if it were me, it would come down to the quality of the microphones that they have. Of course, you could use Zoom ISO and do a pretty good contribution. The hard part is that it's easy to forget that most people don't have, mute your mic in Zoom for contribution and, all the little stuff that we do every day on office hours. The other part of it is, for those who don't know, Harshid is visually impaired. I have no idea how you do setup. I know plenty of sighted people that do not, set stuff up correctly when they have to take it off their desk and put it somewhere else. So to that end, I guess it's the comfort that you have with moving your hardware and basically how good the mics are for your contributors.
Next question.
This one's from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Anything noteworthy in the 10.0 update for the ATEM?
And Courtney Gooden raised his hand on this one. Courtney?
Well, according to their changelog, nothing unless you have a 4ME Constellation 4K Plus, because here's the changelog. It says what's new is support for the new ATEM 4ME Constellation 4K Plus, and then general performance and stability updates, which is in every single update. So not much to note if you don't have one of those new ATEM 4ME Constellation 4K Pluses.
So we are here to answer your questions, and we have gone through all of ours for today. So thank you so much for all of that participation. This is Thursday, which means that David Paskin and the Rundown is tonight. For those of you who enjoy our evening shows, starts at 6 p.m., and you can find breadcrumbs to the trail for that in your regular notes and things like that. Our thank yous go out to everybody who makes this show possible. That includes, obviously, all of you who watch the show and contribute the questions. Without you, we do not have a show every day. So thank you so much for your participation that way. For our panelists, it would be a pretty dull show if we just had the questions, read them out, and nobody answered them. So thanks, guys, and everybody else who's been involved in this over the course of all these almost 2,000 shows that we have done. Don't forget that Sunday is the 2000th show here. I think it's kind of special, so I don't know what they're planning, but that's what I hear in the background. Regular show. Okay. One more thing, and that is the incredible efforts by the back-end crew. You have no idea how talented so many of these people are. In fact, all of them are incredibly talented. They all have talents in different areas, and they all pitch in. There's so much kind of almost research-level stuff going on in the back end. And the reason we do this every day is because we want to learn and excel at how this new technology works. And I have learned so much here that it's spun my life off into a lot of different circumstances. If you'd like to be a part of that, there are ways you can volunteer and we talk about them on most of the shows. So that's going to lead us to the Tlaloc Traversal, which is our kind of log of how far you would have had to travel to get the information you got in this show if you were to go around and talk to the experts that you were able to listen to today. And today that was 24,000 miles. That's what your journey would have been, 39,000 kilometers, 189 million bananas for scale. Jason's got one that he's holding up. I don't know whether we're cutting to him in the live feed, but that is our standard banana. And we will have a standard banana with us tomorrow as we come back and do the show for the next day. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Any of our listeners work for IMDb, I will like just bow down if Banana for Scale ends up getting some sort of, citation on the website.
And a Wilhelm scream notification, yes. OH2K, it's not going to be recorded if it's on.
I think we stole Banana for Scale from Reddit, though. Reddit
It doesn't matter.
Yes, that's true. We probably
It doesn't
used it
until
more
it's on
often
IMDb. It does not matter.
Okay.
Doing a search on Wikipedia right now. Banana for Scale. Is there a Wikipedia page yet?
Monday
No,
was office hours 2001.
Yeah, it'll be Sunday. It'll be not recorded, so be there or miss
Or
it.
you'll miss it.
Yeah,
Aren't you glad I didn't say
Why?
banana?
never to be seen again.
Now, we've had a lot of discussions. It says SpaceX. Interesting.
Doesn't matter. We will put it on IMDb, so it will be ours.